Welcome to the No Problem Parenting Podcast. Turn behavior problems into no problem with Jackie Finneman. Are you ready to become the confident leader your kids crave you to be? Do you want to learn how to make parenting easier and more fulfilling? Whether you are at your wit's end or you want to have more fun as a parent, you're definitely in the right place. Now here's your host, Jackie Finneman.
Hey, welcome back, parents. You know, No Problem Parenting is all about helping you become the confident leader that your kids crave you to be. And when we're confident, our kids just do better. We can help them become confident. And I brought a special guest on today to help us do exactly that, to help us raise confident kids. I'd like to introduce you to Nellie Harden. She is a wife and a mom to 4 daughters, teens and tweens. She's a dreamer, an adventurer, a servant, a multipreneur, a forever student, and a devoted teacher. But her, as she calls it, ride or die passion is her work as a family life and leadership coach. Her work and her passions exist in the realms of family and parent mentorship because she believes that a family filled with creativity, with fun, laughter, challenge, adventure, problem solving, hugs, good food, and learning can not only change a person's life, but it's really the best chance at positively changing the world. She helps families build self-led discipline and leadership into their homes in order to set their children up for a wildly successful life on their terms and elevate the family experience with big joy, palpable peace, and everyday growth. She started the 6570 project, which 6570 is the actual amount of days that we have from when a child is born till they're 18 years old to find clarity on how to show up for our kids, to learn how to communicate with our kids, to master time, discipline, and create some of the best memories of all of your lives so that there's nothing but gratitude between you and even the years later. So 6570, 6,570 days to do that. Her Family Leadership Academy is a unique, one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-parenthood experience designed to unlock the greatness of your child as you move from parent-disciplined leadership to self-disciplined leadership so that you can leave the regret, the frustration, and wasted time behind and fully embrace every moment in joy, peace, success, and growth. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Nellie.
Thank you so much for having me on here. We were talking a little bit beforehand. I think we're definitely like cut from the same cloth. So I love it. My name is Nellie Harden. Let's see, quick bio. I live on the coast of the United States over in North Carolina, 4 kids, married for a couple decades plus at this point. And I am a family life and leadership coach, and really where I have a long birth story to, not long, I'm not going to keep you forever, but I have a interesting birth story to this work for me. Just from the fact that when I was super young, I lost my dad when I was super young. He passed away when I was 1.5. And so I always had this very idea of life is very precious. Life is very fast. If you are going to do something, do it today. Very carpe diem, you know? And so I was going along, you have this life plan. I was a Michigan kid, middle of the country, and somehow had salt in my veins and wanted to be out in the ocean. And I went into marine mammalogy. And of course, in my life plan, I was like, okay, I do this, this, and this, meet the husband at like 28, 30, and then have kids, lo and behold, I meet the husband at 18 and we get married 4 years later and all of these things. But we were going along, we started wanting to have a family, and we went through infertility for a while, which was devastating and very difficult. But then we had 4 kids in 4 years. And so that was not devastating, but very difficult.
Yes. You have a set of twins in there, right?
Yes. So my middle 2 are twins, and they're all girls. And so now today they're 16, 14, 14, and 12. But yes. And so when you have all of that turmoil happening, and we had a major life event with my husband happening in there. He went into, in his early 30s, he went into cardiac failure, and then he's still here today, still good, but he did go into cardiac failure, and for 2 years it was hospitals, and it was medications, and it was self-injections, and it was procedures and all of the things. Meanwhile, I'm pregnant with my 4th, and he can't even go up and down stairs. So it was, I mean, if you can imagine a tumultuous time, it was a tumultuous time. And in around circa April 2010, I'm sitting in a waiting room, a hospital waiting room. My husband's in experimental heart surgery. That was our last effort. Like, we had exhausted everything else. And I have 4 kids at this point, then 4 kids, 4 and under, and he's in surgery. And it is a very eye-opening moment. And I all of a sudden had all of those feelings and understandings of life is fleeting. We have to take care of what we want to take care of today. Right. And, not to say, blow everything and go to Greece, which some days I want to do, but, I was just saying, whatever you want to do and plan your life accordingly. And then just 5 weeks later, one of my daughters, who was 2, one of the twins, she actually had a non-fatal drowning accident in my in-laws pool. And those 2 events just 5 weeks apart from one another. And she's okay today, but we had to watch her for about a year for neural signs. We brought her back with CPR. It was big. So 2010 really was just a wake up moment, like a really hard wake up moment. And we started asking ourselves, hold on a second. We are not guaranteed any time. We have a very limited time with our kids at home. In fact, we have 6,570 days. That's where that number comes from. It's how many days are in 18 years. And yes, it's not exact, we don't boot them on their 18th birthday or anything. But that's approximately what we have when we are in the highest influence and highest impact zone for them. And so what do we actually want them to get out of this childhood experience? We didn't want to just go at it haphazard. We didn't want to just hope for the best. We didn't want to just go with the herd and be like, okay, well, I'm checking all the boxes along the way. But we wanted a destination. And if we had a destination, we could build a map to get there. And that's exactly what we really started planning for our kids' childhood, for my husband and I's parenthood, right? This is 18 years of our lives too. And also for our lives in general. And it was really a beautiful thing to have our kids be able to grow up with that sort of mentality of, okay, I am actually physically and planning my life. And it's been a beautiful thing ever since. And I just started documenting and doing things and working with families in 2012. I started working with families, and I've been doing it ever since in different capacities. But it always came back to building in them the leader that they can be, that self-led leader, because you need it for everything in life. I remember when I first started, I did polls and I was like, is there anything that you can do without having that self-led leader inside of you? And the answer was no. And so that's what I decided to go all in on. And it was really my calling to help families do that when the kids are still at home, so they can launch into their lives equipped for their greatness.
Wow. And you just said so much in there. I like just your survival story, should we call it? Like, I mean, my goodness.
Felt like that some days.
Yes, for sure. And the resilience that you have to be able to get through all of the fear that you've been through, especially in those early years of your marriage. I'm just happy to hear that things have all really turned out.
Yes.
And gone well in the long run for you. And I love that you say building leaders in kids, because I do feel like as a parent of my own child and in all the work that I've done with other families, like when our kids can be confident leaders, it prevents so many problems. It helps them build resilience of their own. And really, after leaving 20 years of being a counselor, my mission, my goal is to help parents become confident leaders for their kids, right? It increases the odds. Now you can be a really sucky parent and you can just mess up completely. And those kids, believe it or not, there are plenty of kids that are going to turn out great despite your worst parenting moment. It's just, it just fills me up to help talk parents off a ledge and get you to feel like that confident leader that I say your kids crave you to be. So I think that's why we're kind of like sisters from another mister or something, with our message and the kind of coaching support that we offer to parents and families. You really offer it to the whole family. What does the family leadership coaching look like?
Well, there's different levels. And I just want to meet people where they are at. And I love working with the whole family, and I really leave it up to the family because I work with all ages. So if the kids are younger, then they're there for some of the time or not some of the time. But if they're older, then they're there a little bit more often. And it really is all about establishing a foundation of communication within the family, right? I always look at it like an arrow, more like a ray in geometry, I guess. But there's the dot, that's connection. But connection is just it's a point, right? You can't keep going with connection if you don't have communication with that. So connection is your point, communication keeps it going, and then clarity to know where you're going is the arrow, so that when we are literally launching them into life later on, I mean, this is a 6,570-day runway, right? So when we're launching them into life, they have that direction and they have all three pieces of that. And so when I work with families, I am going through core beliefs. I am going through how it is to discipline, right? Consequence discipline and growth discipline. We are talking about the inevitable impacts that are happening along the way. Like you said, parents are going to screw up. I am not a perfect parent by any means. And so we are going to screw up along the way, and it is going to impact. But how are we going to shape that impact? You can screw up and not say anything, and it makes an impact. And you can screw up and say something and discuss it, and it makes another impact, right? So anyway, we talk all about those things, really spend a lot of time in communication, how we take in information, how we put out information, body language, right? All of these different things, because our families are our training zone for the world later on. And so if we can launch these kids into their lives, having cemented into their core beliefs and their perspectives, their worldviews, we can cement in there how to actually have a productive conversation, how to have that resilience, that vision, that vulnerability, that discipline, and all of those things that are encompassed in that leadership. If we can go into life that way when we're 18, 19 years old, then we can accomplish so much more than what we're doing. And I'm not talking about success and, the way that the world might view it or what have you. I remember one person told me when I was discussing my work with him, he's an older gentleman, and he said, not everyone wants to be a CEO. And I was like, oh, and amen for that, right? Absolutely. Not everyone wants to be a CEO, but leadership is not reserved for CEOs, right? Leadership is for employees, right? You, as a business owner, you want your employees to have that self-ignition within them, to be able to go and see a problem and go through the motions to fix it and be diligent and get to an accomplishment on the other side, right? You need leadership to lead a family. You need leadership to just wake up in the morning and lead yourself throughout the day in the conversations that you have and all of this. So I think that's something that I find interesting today, is that a lot of people do feel like this leadership is associated with and reserved for the business sector. And that's not true at all. Everyone needs that leadership within them.
I absolutely agree. And I think parenting wise, we often don't think of ourselves as leaders. We think of ourselves as like, we have to teach lessons, in parenting. It's our job to teach kids a lesson. It's our job to warn them, what to be careful for, or to watch out for this or that, or to tell them right from wrong, and it's like, well, yeah, kind of. But when your typical form of communication is just kind of like telling your kids what to do, how to do it, how to jump and how high, and, what to not do, and warning them and all that, you're really, really off track, and kids start to resent their parents. If you have a very compliant kid, they'll go along with it until, a certain point or a certain age, and then maybe they'll start to rebel. But if you have a strong-willed kid, or if you have just a strong leader, necessarily strong-willed, but they're just a natural born leader, they're going to buck your system and they're going to challenge you nonstop. And so today, that's what we're going to talk a little bit about, the power struggle stuff and the communication, and how to have some leadership communication with our kids. What is a power struggle at its core?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's a control issue, right? It's a control issue of it's not I want to be right necessarily. It is I am in charge of me and I need to be able to grasp onto something, because if you're telling me everything that I'm doing is wrong, then that means I have no foundation to stand on. And you see this in 2-year-olds, even younger. You see it in 50-year-olds. But these power struggles, they go back and forth. And I really look at them as like a tug of war. Like, no, I want it. I want it. And what's interesting is recently I actually took we have 2 dogs that are rescues, and mind you, my whole background, my first 10 years of my career were animals. My second 10 years and going on plus have now been humans. So I see all of these correlations, and it's kind of funny, but we took 2 of our dogs who are rescues to training the other day because they're kind of crazy. And the trainer that was there, she took a rope in her hand and she said, she put it in our hand and she said, okay, I'm going to do this. What is your first reaction? And so she pulled it. What is your first reaction to do if if someone is pulling something out of your hand?
You pull back.
Pull back.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
Exactly. And so sometimes that's exactly what a power struggle is. Sometimes people don't even care, right? What the topic is. It's just that someone is pulling their rope, and so they're going to pull harder. It could be whether to have wheat bread or ciabatta bread for dinner. I don't know. It could be something totally inane. Doesn't matter. No one actually has an opinion on it. It's just that you are pulling on their strength. You are pulling on their control. And so they're going to try and take that control back. And that's really where it comes from. And so stepping back and understanding, wait a second, are we actually having a power struggle over something that matters right now? Or are we both being irritable and just pulling each other's, rope back and forth in this tug of war game?
It's amazing to see what happens when your child is starting the tug of war, maybe, right? They're not wanting to get their shoes on, or they're not wanting to get ready for school, or they're not, or bed, or whatever it is. And parents join in on the battle. So how can we prepare for, and it is kind of silly if you think about that with an adult playing tug of war with a toddler or even a teenager over something that doesn't really matter. Is this just an effort to win a battle and just to feel like I'm in charge? We both want to feel like we're in charge, right? How do we prevent a power struggle? What kinds of things can we do to prepare if we know a battle might be coming, or even if we're caught off guard?
Right. Well, I think power struggles too. It is very, very, very rarely that the power struggle is about whatever the power struggle is verbally about, right? If you are leaving the house and your kiddo is trying to put his shoes on and you're like, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go. And then there's like, I'm doing the best I can. And then they start being defiant and all the things. Well, that really, let's take a few steps back, right? And we didn't set up for success very well. And I can say this because I'm guilty, so guilty of this, right? Maybe we didn't give ourselves enough time to get ready, right? And so now we're rushing and our anxiety is high. We're worried about what whoever's going to think or whatever, where we're going. And we didn't set ourselves or our kid up for success in giving ourselves enough time. So we're having this power struggle with our kid about tying their shoes, which they're obviously trying. Or even if they're not, maybe they're not trying because they're mad at their sister for taking a toy 30 minutes earlier, And so I think the best way to prevent power struggles is to plan for success, meaning setting up for success by giving yourself enough time, walking through, calming down within the situation that you're in, right? And for the kiddos, just look at them and understand that they are trying. Now, there's going to be some times that they are not, and they are just being totally defiant and, rude to you, but it's not because of whatever is on the surface. There's something else happening. So sitting down, I always say, drop the rope, pull up a chair. That's for power struggles. You want to drop the rope and pull up a chair, and you just want to get on their eye level, right? You're not towering above them. You want to get on their eye level and just be like, so tell me what's going on. And they're like, I just can't tie my shoes. And they're like, okay, I get that. But why are you so frustrated about this? What's really going on? And I am telling you, even a 2-year-old can vocalize this. I have been having real conversations with my kids, not, not the goo goo gaga, right? Or like real conversations with my kids, their entire lives. I mean, we were faced with, like I was saying earlier, I was in a hospital with 4 kids that were between 4 and little, when we didn't know if their dad was going to make it. We had to have conversations, right? And they are so willing and able to actually communicate with you and give you their thoughts if you give them the space to do that. Kids are miraculous. They really have a lot of amazing ideas in there, and just sitting and giving them room to give their opinion. You don't have to take their opinion, but giving them space to give their opinion, it just it turns the page. So avoiding power struggles is setting up for success.
Right. And I love that you say that, because oftentimes it's not that they don't want to put their shoes on. It's not that they don't want to get their stuff together and get to school and they want to have this big battle or whatever. There's something underneath it all.
Right.
There's something underneath it all. It's the seek first to understand, what is this power struggle about? And they just need, it can be 30 seconds of you, even just empathetically, which goes into step 3 about changing the conversation, to say, hey, I know you don't want to be this upset. I know you don't want to be struggling right now. What's going on? Rather than buying into the fact that this is a personalized power struggle, that they just want to be defiant and be mean to you for some reason.
Right.
We are the adults. We're the leaders. We should be able to identify that. So let's get into the tweens and the teens. And like I mentioned, step 3 of changing the conversation. I think oftentimes our kids hit those tween years and we start to kind of feel like we're losing them. We don't know who they are. Their behavior's changing. We sometimes don't even understand them, or what they're talking about, or we don't have the same interests that they're into, or that sort of thing. And so how do we break through the walls they might be putting up, so that we can really have a good conversation, get to know them again, almost, right? And connect with them. What are some ideas for us?
My number one idea for sure. What do you do if you meet somebody as an adult and you're like, oh, I'd like to get to know them more, right? You date them. That is what I suggest you do with your kids. Now, I have 4 kids. That's a lot of kiddos to date per se, but having one-on-one time, and keep in mind, I have all tweens and teens right now, 12, 14, 16. And
that's and all teenage girls. That's just fantastic.
Yes,
You're earning your halos every day, right?
It gets interesting sometimes, I gotta say. And the world outside of our house, it's crazy out there, and the virtual, social world, it is crazy out there. So being able to stay connected, remember I said earlier, connection is a point, and then you have to have communication to keep it going, right? And then have the conversation to have clarity. And it's so vital. So having that one-on-one time every week is what we do. So we date our kids. Every Tuesday and Thursday night at 9:00, I go to one kid's room, my husband goes to another one. And then on Thursday, my husband goes to one kid's room and I go to another one. And so every week my kids know that they are going to have, and we have family time every single night, 6 to 9 is family time. And then Sundays are our family day and all of this stuff. But it's different to have that one-on-one time, right? Because their siblings aren't around. We aren't talking about what's happening during the day. It's literally sitting on their bed or going for a walk or doing whatever. And it's, hey, so what's going on with you? How are things going? And it's just your eyeballs and their eyeballs looking at each other. And there's a lot of truth, a lot of honesty, a lot of trust that is built during that time. And they know that every week they're going to have a parent in their room with one-on-one time talking to them, right? And sometimes we play games and sometimes we have, life serious conversations. And it's just whatever the relationship, whatever they need that day, that's what we do. But I think that's the most vital thing that you want to do. You knew them when they were young because you were their whole world, right? But as they're going into tween and teens, they're having an entire world outside of your world. And so in order to stay connected, you have to keep that communication going, and having that one-on-one time, that date time is a great way to do that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And I think we schedule so much these days. Our calendars are full and they're booked. And then we can't wait to binge watch, our favorite show and just veg out. But usually the reason we feel like we do need to binge watch our favorite show or, something like that is because we're stressed or overwhelmed by everything. I think this is just a real schedule in that time with the kids so that you're not dreading, right, the behaviors that are coming up or, the things you've missed out on or overthinking the conversation that you should be having with your kid. I think it is important, some parents will say, well, I could never do that. Well, yes, you can. You actually really can. It takes a little work. If you can schedule sports and extracurricular activities and piano lessons and, whatever else it is, you can schedule some time with your tween or your teen and it will prove super valuable in the long run, right?
Yes.
And it's not coming up only when there's a problem.
Right. Exactly. You're preempting it. And for parents out there too, that are like, I could never do this with my kid. We'd just sit there and stare at each other. And I'm like, okay, then sit there and stare at each other, or like, just paint something together or do a puzzle together, or it's okay to sit in silence with your kid. And at the beginning of this, as you're learning how to be in one another's company, because sometimes that is just step one. Over time, you've kind of forgotten how to be in just one another's company, right? I think about like empty nesters after all the kids go and the husband and wife need to like relearn who each other are, but that can happen in even a parent-child relationship. So just get to know each other, be comfortable in one another's company. And maybe on the third time that you're doing it, maybe 20 minutes in, they're like, so this thing happened at school, and you're like, oh yeah, so tell me more about that, and you can just start having the conversation much more naturally. You don't have to go in there and be like, so we need to talk about these, 9 things today.
Yeah. Not this pressured thing where your kid feels like you're in a business meeting or something, right? Yeah, that's a really good point though. And I think, social media is or gaming is a big quote unquote issue for parents these days. But really, one of the easiest ways to make it a non-issue is to actually watch your kids while they're gaming. Watch them while they're on TikTok, scrolling through Instagram, doing whatever. Be interested and be curious about what they're into. What they're looking at. And it is so hard. Take it from me, mom of a teenage boy. I am definitely not into a lot of the things that he's into. But the best conversations come when you're just sitting next to them and actually interested in, it doesn't have to be technology. It can be whatever it is, they're painting, they're doing Legos, they're, creating something, they're playing their Barbie dolls, whatever it is. But literally just being and sitting there. And even if nothing great comes out of the first time that you do it, or the second time or the third time, watching Minecraft years ago with my son, I would get dizzy from watching him build and create. I wasn't keeping up with what was going on, but it was so interesting and fascinating to hear about his creations and or why he was doing what he was doing and to just learn. And then all of a sudden, just like you said, a conversation would come up about something a kid did at school that day that was really funny. I really, really love the idea of scheduling time and just doing it no matter what.
Yep. They've come to just rely on it and they love that time. They're like, oh, we got to turn off our, usually between 8 and 9, we watch a family show together or whatever. They're like, oh, only a couple more minutes. It's one-on-one time tonight,
Oh, that is absolutely fantastic. All right. Well, we have to get running here, but tell us a little bit about how people can get in touch with you and they can learn more about your Family Architects Club and also your Family Leadership Masterclass.
Yes, absolutely. So I keep to the KISS principle, right? Keep it super simple. I am not a complicated person. So I like the one-stop shop, and that is my website. You can connect to everything through nellieharden.com. That's NELLIEHARDEN.com. And the Family Architects Club is my online community. I call parents architects because we are literally designing, planning, and building the beginning of someone else's life, which is no small feat. And if we are architects, then our greatest project is this 6570 family project. And that is getting them through their training into adulthood with a whole lot of laughs and kitchen dance parties and fun, and also intentional building. And so, you can find everything, including a masterclass that I do on there called Ignite Their Inner Leader. And all of it is open to you just directly from the website.
That is fantastic. All right. And you're new to podcasting as well. And so They can find you at the 6570 Family Project Podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Nellie, for being with me today.
Of course. This was so fun.
I look forward to staying connected and partnering up even, I think, on a few different projects. This will be fun. I'm so glad to have met you.
Oh, you too. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the No Problem Parenting Podcast. Join Jackie next time for more tips, tools, and resources that will help you become the confident leader your kids crave you to be. Who do you know that we could support on their parenting journey? Like this podcast, subscribe, share, or leave a review of the show. Your support of the No Problem Parenting Podcast pays it forward and helps us help more families.